Thank you all for being here. Growing great garlic. I first saw Pete teach this in the hay barn at UCSC in person. I think it was 2018, I believe. And Oren was teaching it with him, and it was incredible. So this is great that we get it virtually and share it with so many people. Next slide, please. Can you transition? There we go. All right. Now I know most of us have been on quite a few Zoom calls by now, but let's just do the housekeeping. You've come in and we've started you with a muted microphone and your video off. Thank you for keeping it that way. We're going to conserve bandwidth that way. We recommend speaker view to see the best of the speaker who's talking. The chat window is good for comments with a group or an individual. It's also good for questions if you want to put them there, or you can use the QA function for specific questions. We will try to answer those real time. I will be watching the chat and the QA and feed them back to Pete if it seems okay to interrupt him. Otherwise, we will answer them at the end and we'll try not to forget any. There's a CC live script button on the bottom you can turn on if you're looking for closed captioning because you can't hear. And for technical assistance, we can directly chat with Vanessa Ackerman, who is going to help you through any issues you might have. And after class, I want everyone to know we're going to send everybody who registered the presentation and a link to this recording. So this is being recorded in case you didn't know, and that'll show up in your email within a couple days. Next. Next slide, Pete. There we go. My name is Delise Weir, and I happen to be privileged to sit on the board of the Friends of the UCSC Farm and Garden. And our job is to support the Center for Agroecology, formerly known as CASFIS, is now the Center for Agroecology. We've just renamed. By being a friend member, you get 10% off on seeds, plants, and tools at a number of garden centers. I personally pay for my membership that way within 2 visits to San Lorenzo Garden Center. There's 10% off plants at the garden company, and we have special member-only events and discounts on different things. And if you buy at certain levels, you get things like a beautiful little garden hand hoe. There are 1,000 great reasons to join the Friends of the Farm and Garden, but the biggest one is that you're supporting the work that the center is doing. So in the chat, you will see a link to where you can join the Friends. And thank you for coming. Next, please. Now, we don't know where you're sitting, but the Center for Agroecology, the core work we do is responsible and sustainable land stewardship. So you may be elsewhere, but I know that Pete and I are sitting in the Awaswas speaking Uwupi tribe territory, and they were the original land stewards of these lands. They're represented today by their descendants. You may have heard of them, the Amamutsan tribal band. We encourage you to understand their history, to support their work. There will be a link in your chat if you want to reference that. And they continue to reclaim their sovereignty and protect ecosystems for generations to come, and we support that. Next, please. And on to Pete.
Okay. All right, and Delise, I don't see myself. Is that fine?
I can see you.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Right.
You're good.
All right, everybody. It is Tuesday night garlic time. Such an honor to be here for an hour and a half with everybody to dive in deeply to this special plant. I'm very excited to be here, and just want to say again, thank you. I hope you grab a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, a glass of wine, some snacks, your notepad. Maybe you're having some roasted garlic with crackers.
Hmm.
But thank you for being here, and I'm excited to have some time to dive into this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful plant. Just a quick overview of what we're going to be talking about. And Elise, thank you for the intro as well. Going to touch a little bit on my garlic journey. Look into a little bit of some of the many reasons of why we would consider growing garlic in the home garden. Dabble a little bit in garlic origin and distribution. Then we will look at hardneck garlic versus softneck garlic and the traits of both. And then we are going to kind of get into the real heart of the discussion, which is growing garlic season by season, fall, winter, spring, and summer. Tricks of the trade, experimental things that we've done over the past at Sandhill Farms, and things I've learned from other garlic growers. Have a little time for closing remarks, and then participant Q&A at the end. Like Delise said, we'll see if it makes sense to touch on some of the questions that come up in the moment. And we'll definitely make sure that we have time at the end for questions and some back and forth dialogue. All right. So I was about 3 years old. This isn't a memory I have myself, but my mom has told the story to me many times, and it just brings a smile to my face every time, and just worth kind of starting off to share a little bit of my journey as a gardener and a farmer. The story goes that at around 3 years old, late summer, early fall, a lot of bounty in my mom's home garden. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest. And the story goes that I decided it was time to harvest my mom's garden and distribute it to the neighborhood. I was pulling out onions and carrots and leafy vegetables and whatever I could get my hands on, probably tore a lot of stuff apart, but filled up a wheelbarrow and let my mom know that it was time to sell the crops and distribute the goods. And so we went, I think it's probably like across the street to one or two houses, but we did, I did have my first kind of entrepreneurial experience with the homegrown garden and sharing the wealth. So I love that. I think that it was a little bit of an insight into a passion that I would discover, a decade and a half later. The Chadwick Garden by moonlight. So I remember this, sometimes in life you don't remember things 2 weeks ago, but something that happened 20 years ago is crystal clear. And that is my first walk into the Chadwick Garden. It was spring. It was probably actually February, early March. And I went to UC Santa Cruz to study marine biology. And I went to Cowell College. And so my freshman dorm was, right across the street from the Chadwick Garden. And it was a solo wandering exploration. And I walked into the gate, did not know yet the magical land that I was about to walk into. And I remember walking through trees and tunnels and vines, and suddenly in the light of the moon, I remember seeing these gorgeous, symmetrical, emerald spear-shaped leaves pointing up into the stars. And it was really like love at first sight. It swept me off my feet. I remember I had my journal with me, and I knelt down next to these plants, had no idea what they were. And I drew a picture of them in my journal. And then I started to realize that these wooden signs were labeled the different beds, and there were names like Georgian Crystal and Transylvania and Music. And I was intrigued. I had no idea what the plant was, but it really was just the beauty of the plant that kind of caught me off guard and brought me down to my knees and had me writing in my journal about it. And I think I did like pull away a little bit of the mulch at the base of the stalk and saw these, kind of bulbing structure beneath the stem. Oh. And yes, I am home with a barking dog. Um, and anyways, that was my first interaction with garlic that I can think of. I'm gonna have to be right back.
Well, Pizza Way, I want to say to everybody, if you have questions at any point, please do not hesitate to put them in the chat or the Q&A.
I was deep into that memory as well. Okay.
Okay.
Anyways, that was a very, defining moment for me. I think 2 days later, I had my first interaction with Orrin Martin, who leads the educational activities and manages the Chadwick Garden. And I think a couple days later, during the daytime, I went back. I actually went early morning, and I remember I was picking mandarins and filled like my whole t-shirt full of mandarins, and I turned around the corner and Orrin's staring at me, and I felt like I was like had my hand in the cookie jar, and he was looking at me like, "What are you doing? Do you have enough citrus for the day, sir?" But when I told him I was back to check out these plants that I had seen a couple of nights ago, and I pointed out where they were, he started to calm down a little bit, and that was the start of a relationship that I'm very grateful for during my undergrad experience at UC Santa Cruz. So, that was basically within weeks of that experience, I kind of shifted my path at UC Santa Cruz from marine biology to the agroecology program, and kind of got my hands and feet dirty in any way that I could with the farm and garden program. I ended up doing a internship with Orrin, where I cataloged 200 different rare garlic varieties into a resource manual that I think still is up there at the Chadwick Garden. I did independent studies, internships with Jim Leap. Steve Gleesman was my faculty sponsor and advisor for my thesis. And I'm just saying this whole story to, I guess, express a lot of gratitude too for the connections and the inspiration that I was opened up to during my time at the farm and garden. So it was during my, my undergrad experience where I had this passion ignited with farming and agriculture, and that's kind of carried me for the last decade and a half since I wrapped up there. My family lived in northern Utah in Eden, and that's where I started Sandhill Farms and began growing garlic. This is a banana slug, and one of my favorite varieties of garlic, Siberian, which is a marbled purple stripe right there. So we didn't just grow garlic in Eden. The farm is located at 5,000 feet above sea level. So we get snow in June and hard frost in late August. So garlic thrived there because it loves the cold, but we grew a bunch of other crops. This is a view kind of from the high point of the farm, the yurt, the surrounding mountains, and the different fields that we cultivated there. Harvest with family, definitely starting the farm and having it be in my parents' backyard. So my mom and I with rhubarb, my sister and my mom with a lavender harvest. It definitely became a family affair, and whether they had a say in it or not, it became something that we were all engaged with, and definitely very, very grateful for. It's my wife Katie on the tractor. The farm family expanded. 2014, Joro was born, and he's harvested garlic. His birthday is July 10th. So that's right at garlic harvest time. So he's harvested garlic for many, many birthdays. Yeah. It's my dad with Joro playing with garlic, and Joro looking pretty serious on the tractor. At age 3, he was operating the spader, doing the flail mowing. turning over beds and doing the majority of the tractor work. Just joking. All right, so yeah, I just wanted to share that little story there about my background, and again, just express my gratitude for the connections and the people that I met and inspired me during my time at UC Santa Cruz and the early years of Sandhill Farms. So everybody is here. I'm not trying to convince anybody of this topic here, why grow garlic, but I just thought I'd touch on a couple of reasons that I've become really drawn to growing this crop year after year. I think we all know medicine, garlic has over 7,000 years of recorded usage as a medicinal herb, immune system stimulant, antimicrobial, antibacterial, antiviral, expectorant. I think one of the most important things in this time of pandemic is it's the ultimate immune system supporting herb. It kickstarts the system to be strong, and growing that in your backyard is a little bit of health insurance. So endless studies and history that shows that garlic is a potent herbal medicine. Of course, it's a culinary staple. It's a foundation of culinary cuisines from around the world. I think one thing with heirloom garlic, especially in terms of the culinary factor, is the flavor diversity, especially in hardneck garlic. There's oily garlics and garlics that are good with fish, and garlics that are good with different dishes and bring out the spice or bring out the mild heat. And I think that exploring the culinary diversity of garlic is something that I really hope people in this workshop consider growing different varieties than they've grown before, and seeing what flavors come up with the unique qualities of each person's soil and climate. I just want to talk briefly too about preserving the harvest. Honey in garlic preserved in honey, something that I learned from people in the past. It's an amazing way to slowly leak out some of the allicin, the sulfur compound that's responsible for garlic's medicinal qualities. If you put into a mason jar, pack garlic into a mason jar full of honey, let it sit for 3 to 4 months, and then take a spoonful of the honey, put it in a tea. Amazing way to absorb the medicinal qualities, but not have the intensity of the odor. Also in Cuba, I've spent time in Cuba, and in Cuba, there's a concoction, a potion. They take 2 bulbs of garlic, they break up the individual cloves, peel them, put them in a liter of rum, and let that sit for 2 to 3 months. And then every morning, before anything else is in the system, a small shot of this garlic infused rum. And they swore that it was a cure-all for everything from arthritis to hypertension and cholesterol issues. And also black garlic is a unique kind of byproduct of the raw garlic. Dehydrated garlic is something that's really easy to do in the kitchen. So just these different ways to kind of take your garlic experience to the next level. Rotations in the home garden, garlic is planted in the fall, and so in terms of maximizing bed space, you can grow something during the primary growing season, summer growing season. Once your tomatoes or winter squash or summer crops are done, you clear your bed, you amend it, and then you're ready to maximize your planter box or your garden space with the planting of fall garlic. Also, garlic is harvested in midsummer, late June, early July, which allows enough time post-harvest to, again, clear the crop, amend it, and get in a fall planting of something post-garlic. So it works great in the rotations of the home garden. Garlic is great for children in the educational setting for school gardens. It's the seed or the clove is large, so small hands of a 5-year-old can handle a nice clove in terms of planting. planted in the early part of the school year, harvested at the end. So anybody that's on here and that's interested in chatting with me more about activities around that, I'd be happy to talk further through email or something. It's a great crop to grow in the school garden setting because it's a plant. Yeah.
We have a question.
Oh, great. Let's do it.
Well, in general, I think it would be great if we shared some recipes or how-tos with these preparations you're talking about. But in particular, Mary Alice would like to know about the garlic and honey. Is the garlic raw, steamed, crushed, peeled? How do you add it?
Great. Okay. Thank you for that. And that would be a good idea. We'll talk to Lisa about how we can, I do have some links to some recipes. Maybe we can include that in the follow-up. But in terms of the garlic and honey, so you break apart the bulb into individual cloves, you peel the cloves, and then they go raw directly into the honey. So no cooking, no heating whatsoever. The heat, does deteriorate the potency of the allicin sulfur compound, and so whenever possible, garlic's most potent medicinal quality is when it's not cooked and when it's raw. So yeah, for that garlic honey, the cloves go straight into the honey, peeled, raw, sealed, and like you said, we can maybe follow up with some recipes afterwards. So in terms of this point of gathering community, over the years, we've grown about an acre of garlic, which is 3,000 to 4,000 pounds of garlic, 60,000 to 100,000 cloves. So it's something that lends itself very nicely to group work, group labor settings. And because I feel like many people are drawn to and curious about garlic, that it's a great gathering crop for people in community, whether it's at planting time or at harvest time. We've worked with different youth groups, which is pictured here, the Real Food Rising. It's a youth group out of Salt Lake City. They would come every year, die hard, 15 people, and would help us with the garlic harvest and take home a bunch of garlic and have their own planting stock. So it's a great crop to have in a community garden setting, or if you're a small scale farm, a way to engage your CSA members or your community. Obviously, it's a great gift. So it stores really well. It's not something that's going to wilt or deteriorate quickly. A garlic braid gifted at Thanksgiving or something like that stays in somebody's home for months and months. Nothing better than a functional culinary treat with the medicinal qualities and the beauty, and grown in your backyard. And then, of course, I have to mention, like I said, with my first encounter with garlic, the beauty of the plant. It sticks out in the garden. It's a foundational crop. If you're growing beets and carrots and lettuce and corn and all these other crops, garlic, for me at least, demands attention when you walk through the garden. Its structure, it's in the ground for a long period of time, and when it's out of the ground, you miss it. You miss walking around and seeing it. And when it's time to wrap up the season at the end of the year, that's kind of the last task that is done often before the weather changes and the season wraps up, is planting next year's crop. So I could go on, but those are just some points that I'd like to make about why garlic growing is a great thing to do. Just a couple pictures here. Garlic loves mountain growing conditions. It does not care whatsoever if 20 degrees come through in the spring, a little bit of snow, it perks right up. Nothing like garlic observations in the early morning on the farm. Just another picture here. This is Ukrainian purple. Looks like snow in the mountains behind. All right, so garlic origin and distribution. So wild garlic is native to the Tian Shan Plateau of Central Asia. It's definitely a land of seasonal extremes, hot and dry in the summer months, cold, frigid, often snow covered in the winter. And that is in the steep ravines of, plateau areas of Central Asia is where wild garlic thrived. And Allium sativum, the modern common garlic, is thought to have evolved from a wild species, Allium longicuspis, and it is native to this region of current day Northwest China and into portions of southern Uzbekistan. There's a region known as the Garlic Crescent, which actually extends to current day Afghanistan, Iran, the Southern Caucasus Mountains, the Turkish shores of the Black Sea. And that is considered today to be really the birthplace and the primary center of distribution for modern garlic. And if you think of this region, this was kind of at the crossroads of the major trade routes of the earliest civilizations, ancient Mesopotamia, Samarkand, the Silk Road. So you had this crop, you had this wild plant that the sages of the nomadic sages knew of its medicinal qualities. It stored well. It could be put in a rucksack and carried up over a mountain pass and chewed on when you go over the mountain pass to help your body deal with altitude sickness. And as you descend into the next community or village that you're entering into, it was highly prized as a form of currency. It was traded, and the knowledge of its medicinal properties was shared. And very quickly, because of its geographic location, it began to make its way and travel into different areas of the early civilizations of the world. And I touch on that just because I think that it's pretty fascinating, the diversity, the genetic diversity of varietals of garlic now that we see. There's hundreds, maybe even thousands of different varieties of garlic that did evolve from this wild garlic that was carried by nomadic peoples and in the plateau region of Central Asia, made its way into the Mediterranean. And that's where we see the evolution of all these different varieties, different soil types, different climates, different cultivation methods, really gave rise to the diversity of garlic that we see today. Okay. So hardneck versus softneck garlic. So hardneck garlic, also known as stiffneck garlic, Allium sativum ophioscoridon. That is the most closely related, botanically, most closely related garlic to the wild garlic of the ravines of the Tian Shan Mountains. And it's also the least common garlic that you would encounter at most markets around the world. It is less cultivated than the softneck garlic, which is Allium sativum sativum. Sativum in Latin relates to domesticated. So it's believed that the hardneck garlic is native to the mountainous regions, the cold regions, Eastern Europe, the Caucasus Mountains, Republic of, modern day Republic of Georgia and Russia, and these real cold mountainous climates, that as garlic made its way south and into the Mediterranean region, the garlic became more widely cultivated. It didn't have the intense heat extremes with the cold winters and the hot summers as it did in coastal growing regions. And so the softneck garlic kind of developed in the Mediterranean regions. Some key differences. Hardneck garlic probably cultivated for at least 5,000 years. It has very large cloves, but fewer, like the lower right-hand photo here is a porcelain garlic. So within hardneck and softneck, there's different subvarietal classes. Porcelain garlics like Music or Romanian Red, they only have 3 to 4 to 6 at the most cloves per bulb, but they're large. They're like Brazil nut size. and they're considered by many, the chefs that I've worked with over the years, the flavor of hardneck garlic is superior to soft neck garlic, much more complex, much more intense. And again, I'm going to touch on allicin, which is ALLICIN. It's the sulfur compound that is responsible for garlic's medicinal qualities, as well as the flavor and the pungency. In studies, it's shown that often double the allicin content exists in hardneck garlic versus softneck garlic. In the past, I've grown over 52 different varieties of garlic. It's a little bit overboard in terms of record keeping and sanity. I don't necessarily recommend that, but we've grown 50 hardneck varieties and 2 different softneck varieties, and I would say I am drawn to the hardneck, and I would encourage folks, especially in Mediterranean climates that have primarily grown softneck, to give hardneck garlic a try. That all being said, softneck garlics are great. They are large bulbs. They're very dense. And so for market sales and weight and yields, they can be much more productive than hardneck garlic. There's 10 to 20 cloves per head versus 4 to 6 in a hardneck. So again, high yielding, really dense cloves and dense bulbs. Softneck garlic is 99% of the time what you're going to see in a grocery store. California early and California late, 2 very common varietals grown in the Central Valley. Probably makes up 99% of the U.S. production of garlic. And
Pete,
yeah,
I have read, and you debunk this for me, but I want you to do it for the rest of the people here. I've read that hardneck does not do well in a warm winter climate.
right.
That's not true.
Yeah, I will tell you it's not true, but I will also encourage everybody to experiment on your own. But yeah, like I was saying, I think that common knowledge is, if you're in Colorado at 6,000 feet in the Rocky Mountains, great garlic growing location, you're going to stick to your porcelains, your Rocon Bowl, your marble purple stripes, the hardneck varieties. If you're in coastal Oregon, central coastal California, it's going to be more soft neck. That in general, yeah, you're gonna see consistent results with that. However, in my own home garden, in friends' gardens, and in a couple of market growers' gardens, I've seen beautiful hardneck garlic. Even we're looking at Chesnock Red, which is a real purple striped garlic in the image here. Chesnock Red is from the Republic of Georgia. Chesnock is actually the word for garlic in Russian. Extremely cold, mountainous location, and grown very beautifully right here in Santa Cruz, California. So yes, please give hardneck garlic a chance in the coastal growing locations. Here's a couple more photos. Again, this is Chesnock Red on the left, real beautiful pinstriped coloration on the bulbs. In the center picture, real beautiful, upright, sturdy plant, solid stalk, real symmetrical, upright leaves. And then the classic garlic scape, which is real unique to hardneck garlic. It's basically a false, we could call it, flower stalk. It will emerge from the last set of leaves in the spring. It'll make these really unique kind of curly Q shapes. And we're going to talk about more scapes when we get into garlic management and care. But that is a real distinguishing factor between hardneck and softneck, is this scape, this flower stalk, which actually has amazing culinary value as well. Hardneck garlic tends to have real beautiful coloration as well. This real, depends on your soil type, but this real red, burgundy, purple colors. Softneck garlic, stunning for braids.
Can I bust in here?
Please,
For
please.
the question. So first, validation from Salinas, from coastal areas all over, that people are growing hardneck garlic and it's working for them.
Yay.
Yay. And somebody wants to know about giant garlic. I assume she is talking about elephant garlic. You want to
Oh,
differentiate that little
okay. Okay, so for one, I'm excited to later look through the chat comments and see. Please do add to the chat if you have experimented and have success or failure with hardneck garlic in the coastal regions. That's great to know. Definitely excited to hear more stories of garlic growers in this area. Giant garlic. So yeah, likely, like you said, referring to elephant garlic. So elephant garlic, botanically more closely related to a leek than to garlic. So that's kind of surprising. The most beautiful elephant garlic I've ever seen was from Thomas Farms, which I believe is in the Aptos Hills, probably 8 to 10 years ago. And I bought a couple of bulbs from them for seed and grew it out in Utah. We're talking 1 pound bulbs, cloves the size of a regular bulb. So I guess what I would say about, kind of left elephant garlic out of my discussion, and I guess the reason behind that is honestly that I just don't like the flavor of it. It's impressive. The bulb size is impressive. It does grow great in these kind of moderate maritime climates. I have I remember at a restaurant in southern Utah one time, I had elephant garlic chips. So it was like a big clove, shaved real thin, and then deep fried and with a little seasoning on top, and that was delicious. But besides that, like elephant garlic raw, not palatable for me, not very tasty. They do store well, and they are productive in this region. I know multiple growers that grow it here, so not something I have a lot of experience with. But if you do like the flavor and you like those, it is kind of impressive to pull something the size of a grapefruit out of the ground. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on elephant garlic. So yeah, soft neck garlic, beautiful as braids. I think that one thing that we should look or think about as growers is storability. And I think this is probably the early garlic growers when the medicinal quality was needed to carry through for months and months and months until the next year's harvest, finding varietals that store well and not just relying on growing techniques to support long storage, but finding varieties that store well. Maybe your hardneck garlic fills the niche for your real high allicin content medicinal garlic for the first 4 to 5 months post harvest, but then you've got to have something that carries you over, that keeps you in your garlic until the next season's harvest. And so soft neck garlic, I would say probably the for me at least, the most standout quality is the storability. They often have real tight bulb wrappers and clove coverings, which reduces oxidation and just keeps the garlic from dehydrating. And I've grown of this within soft neck. There's artichoke varietal, subvarietal, which is the most common subvarietal of soft neck, and then there's silver skin. And silver skin are the longest storing garlics. I've grown a Nootka Rose silver skin variety that's stored for 12 months. So we harvested it in July, and it stayed firm and beautiful and hard all the way until the following summer. And so that is, for all the love that I have for hardneck garlic and the encouragement I have for you guys to try it, soft neck garlic, I think, is important to mix into your planting schedule so that you're having something that keeps you in garlic, well into the spring. So now we're going to take a look at a quick planting demo video that I did just a couple days ago. And bear with me for a sec while I get that set up.
And while Pete's queuing that up, I just want to say that we are going to make all these assets available to you after the class.
And my almost 2-year-old daughter, Jasmine, does make a star appearance here. I think the section where I introduced her was edited out of the video, but Jasmine, thanks for the help. It is fall, so it's garlic planting season. And I just want to go over some of the methods and techniques that I've used in the home garden. Uh, as a side note, we're at the home of a fellow garlic enthusiast and garlic home grower in the Seabright neighborhood in Santa Cruz. We're about a mile from the Monterey Bay and the Pacific Ocean, and probably about 25 feet above sea level. And this grower here has been growing hardneck garlic for at least the last 5 years or so. And common that in this region, maritime climates and cooler winter temperatures, softneck garlic is often preferred and grows better. And it's often believed that hardneck garlic thrives more in mountainous climates. That being said, Chesnock Red, a standard purple stripe variety, has been grown in rotation here for several years with a lot of success. Beautiful bulb size, nice purple coloration, nice storability, and real quality garlic. So saying that just to point out that hardneck garlic can thrive in coastal climates. Okay, so your bed has been amended. Amendments worked in 6 to 8 inches into the top of the soil. It's fall, it's planting time. On the home scale, it's great to separate your bulbs into plantable cloves right at the time of planting. That way they're less of a chance to dehydrate, and it's best to separate right at the time of planting. So this is a beautiful porcelain variety grown by my parents in northern Utah at Sandhill Farms. That's what we're going to be planting today. When you pop the cloves, it's kind of your last opportunity to inspect the quality of the cloves and make sure there's no damage to the plantable cloves. So it's your last chance to kind of take a look and make sure there's no damage, no dehydration, that they're nice and firm, in good shape before you put them in the ground. It's great to remove the outside layers of the clove wrappers, but keep the clove coverings intact. If they come off during separation, that's okay. But it is best for protection of the clove to have that clove wrapping in place. One technique that you can use to separate the cloves nicely and not split that clove covering is to use your thumbnail and just separate the segments so that when you split it, it comes apart easily. Once you've got your bulb separated into the individual planting cloves, I like to simply use my hand to make a line. If you're doing a larger planting, you can use string, a piece of wood, something to keep your line straight. It's always good to have help in the garden as well when you can. Come right over this way. Okay, so once you've made a nice line, I like to orient the cloves all in the same direction. You'll see that there's a curved side of the garlic and a straight side of the garlic. We found over the years that garlic grows this beautiful symmetrical fan-shaped leaf pattern. And when the cloves are oriented in the same direction, you have that leaf pattern all growing in the same direction. Why does that matter? Well, it tends to create a nice uniform growth of your row of garlic, and so airflow is improved, circulation is improved, which is important, especially in humid areas or maritime climates. Also, the leaves all grow in a nice pattern, meaning that cultivation and weeding in between the rows is easier and less likelihood of damaging leaves when you're cultivating, especially with a hoe. Again, not necessary on the home scale. However, it is a technique that we've used for years. So before planting, I like to space the garlic, and I use a pinky to thumb shaka for spacing, which is about 8 inches. Again, orienting the cloves in the same direction. And I like to leave them on the soil surface until the whole row is laid out. The next row will also be 8 inches apart. Making your next row of garlic another 8 inches apart. Once your cloves are laid out, planting depth, I like to plant to my third knuckle. You can't really plant garlic too deep, but you can plant it too shallow, especially in cold growing areas where you can have heaving. And the garlic can actually push out of the soil with repeated frost and thaw cycles. And so right to the third knuckle is deep enough. Make sure that you push the garlic down to make good contact with the soil at the bottom. Once the garlic is in the ground, just simply covering it with excess soil, and then to make good contact with the root zone and the soil, pushing it down to remove any air pockets. Make sure to label your garlic varieties and patiently await until they emerge.
That was adorable.
All right. Let's get back to hello, everybody. Okay, and so garlic growing by season. Fall is planting time. Like I said, some of my favorite varietals, whether you're coastal growing or in the mountains, Siberian. I noticed in the chat, somebody in Gilroy is growing beautiful Siberian. That is one of the hardneck varieties that I've heard grows great in more southern or mild latitudes. Chestnut red, like I noted about the friend of mine that grows in the Seabright neighborhood, beautiful chestnut red garlic. Music, a very common hardneck garlic in the porcelain group. Enchilium red, Transylvania, Nootka rose. So those are just some of my favorites. Site selection and rotation. So garlic does love full sun, well-drained soil. So, you know, depending on your soil type, raised beds are often great. Sandy loam soil, clay loam soil. Garlic is pretty adaptable. Rotations, we recommend a three-year rotation. Most issues with disease and fungus and bulb rot, nematodes, those issues arise from, you know, not sourcing your garlic seed from a reputable good source and from rotation issues. So really being careful with not growing garlic after other alliums. So scallions, leeks, onions, shallots. You really want to try to stay to a 3-year rotation. It is great. Soil preparation and amendment. So garlic does have a superficial root structure. So 6 to 8 inches wide, 6 to 8 inches deep. So a shallow incorporation of your amendments is important. Otherwise that garlic just won't get to it if it's 10 to 12 inches below the soil profile. Garlic is in the ground for a long period of time, 9 months, just like a baby in the womb. And so it needs to be going into fertile soil. We recommend horse manure and straw compost, which has a lot of good phosphorus, chicken manure for the nitrogen, but really loading it up in the fall so that nutrient has slow, availability throughout the growing season to your crop. It's really best to not try to rely on top dressing or foliar feeding or something for your amendments, but really, if you can, a cover crop and really heavy, nice compost prior to planting is preferred, just so that garlic has the goods in the ground for its growing season. Timing of planting. If you reference the garlic primer, which is in the resources section, is a great write-up on garlic growing for the Central Coast, and Oren refers to garlic as a holiday plant because you plant around, I believe he says, Thanksgiving, and you amend in Valentine's Day, and you stop water around Memorial Day, and you harvest around the 4th of July, something like that. I know that folks are probably all over the place. And so in terms of planting, I would say generally October, November are kind of key garlic planting months. I would say that I've heard that in terms of addressing the issues that a lot of commercial garlic growers have in the region with rust, which is a fungal issue that spreads through spores, often carried in the maritime air. A lot of commercial growers on the coast don't grow garlic, or they grow it as green garlic, which is harvested in the spring because of rust. And I've never tried this, so this is just kind of hearsay, but later plantings, like late December, even early January, can be one method to address the rust. And the reason behind that is that rust usually happens kind of or starts in the middle part of the winter and early spring, and the plants maybe are more resistant to that if they're just emerging and small. And so therefore a later planting would have them, coming out of the ground and being able to fight back that rust and growing through it before it becomes an issue. That being said, I've had plenty of growers have great success planting garlic in Santa Cruz in mid-October. So it's all an experiment. All right, so planting time, we did go over through this in the video, but I just want to, yeah.
Thank you for the rust comment. We had that as a question. Someone whose garden is right near a field of grass, so they have rust on the grass. And another person would like to know about planting with peels on, peels off. Why would you keep the skin on the clove?
Great, that's a great question. So yeah, clove popping and quality control, that just leads right into that. So, it's good to break apart your bulbs into the individual cloves. Like I said, at the time of planting, unless you're doing hundreds of pounds and you need to do it several days in advance, it's best to pop your bulbs the day of the planting. And that way, the clove wrappers and the clove covering, the bulb wrappers and the clove coverings, their purpose is to keep dehydration from occurring, to keep oxygen out of the naked clove, so that it can maintain its carbohydrates and be kind of a source of food for that early emerging plant. So anything that you can do to maintain that covering over the clove is just a protection to the environment. Keeping the clove wrapper on protects the clove from damage from any pathogens or anything in the soil, as well as keeping it from rotting. It's a protective layer. So, I have had some growers that told me that they actually peel their cloves and soak them in vodka to address nematode issues before planting. Would be incredibly, especially on any scale, would be incredibly labor intensive to do that. So in general, we recommend, sometimes when you break apart the bulb into individual cloves, you will split that clove wrapper. It's fine. But as much as you can, you want to keep that intact. It's just an environmental protectant shield. Spacing, like I said, 8 inches by 8 inches is just easy. And in general, if you have good fertility, that's going to be fine. I've seen growers do 6 inches by 6 inches or even 4 by 4. You're going to have smaller bulbs. It's going to be tougher to weed, but it just all depends on your scale. So as a general rule of thumb, I say 8 to 8 inches. There's a wide, spectrum on that. But I think that's a general spacing that we like. Orientation, this photo actually right here kind of shows well the curved side all oriented in one direction, the flat or straight side oriented in the same direction, pointy end up, basal plate down. The basal plate is where the new roots are going to emerge. And doing that orientation really, it's an aesthetic thing. It looks beautiful in the garden, but it also does help, like I said, with the airflow, and you're going to have less damaged weeds if you're cultivating with a hoe. Depth, again, really important to get it deeper rather than shallower. And we'll jump into some pictures here. I'm going to kind of, realizing the time, we're going to kind of move a little bit quicker through these growing slides, and then make sure we have time at the end for more questions and answers. Again, pre-planting soil fertility is really important. On the left-hand side is a field of cover crop green manure, and on the right-hand side is age compost. Both are great ways to improve soil fertility for garlic growing. Here are a couple pictures of how we've laid out our bed spacing. On the left, the bed is a little bit more narrow, so we just did 3 rows at 8-inch spacing with the cloves 8 inches apart in row. You'll notice, it's nice to have stakes that show the planting date and the varietal. You can also do that in a garden journal, but really important, especially if you have multiple varieties, to do labeling. And the photo on the right, we're able to fit in 4 rows at 8-inch spacing. On a long row, it is nice to have something straight that you can plant along. It helps with weeding and just, having equal spacing for the plant growth. Tucking in for the winter. So once the garlic is planted, it really is important to add that extra amount of soil over the planting hole and then give it a nice tap, a solid tap down. That helps reduce any air pockets, and that could, air pockets and moisture could lead to rot issues or fungal development. And so really pushing the clove in deep, getting it to set nicely in the bottom of the soil, and then packing it in is really important. A lot of people ask about mulch. So, general mulch with all garden crops, the characteristics or the reasons to do that are weed suppression, moisture retention, keeping the soil covered from the harsh elements of either cold or heat. On the left, this has actually become a pretty popular way to grow garlic for market growers or small scale farmers, is on the weed fabric with pre-burned holes at the spacing that you grow at. Honestly, the amount of weeding hours that go into caring for garlic when it's grown without a mulch versus grown on something like the weed fabric is pretty significant. So there's a dibble used to make the planting hole, and then the cloves planted right in, and it's basically no weeding, especially with wood chips in the pathway. Common straw mulch on the right. You want to make sure you're not getting hay, but you're getting straw. Hay has seed in it, and I've done that. Learned that the hard way. Put in a 1/4 acre of garlic with hay and just had a mess of weeds. Straw is great. It does, decompose and helps keep the weeds back. Again, more commercial scale, we have with a tractor put down plastic mulch and planted into that. It's not the best, I would say. It definitely keeps back the weeds, but then you got to deal with, taking a bunch of plastic to the landfill. And then the picture on the right, no mulch at all. You are going to have some soil erosion with heavy rains, but not dealing with the extra labor to add the material is a bonus. And weeding can often be easier when you don't have any covering over the soil. So things to consider, if you're small scale and home growing in the backyard, I would say, grass clippings, leaf mulch, or straw is a great option. So we jump into the winter. It's kind of a waiting game, depends on where you're growing, but it's a slow time of growth. No need to irrigate your garlic pre-emergence. You don't want to introduce any additional moisture into the clove and root zone. And you want to avoid rot. So no need to water your garlic. Wait till it emerges. Wait till the soil begins to dry in the spring. In mild winter regions, there may be some weeding that begins in the winter. And jumping into spring, Orrin always says you can grow garlic, you can grow weeds, but you cannot grow both. That stuck with me always. Here's a picture of just how it should look. You got your beautiful garlic growing and very little weed pressure. Again, a weak root structure and does not compete well with weeds. So you're going to have a drastic reduction in bulb size if you let the weeds get out of hand. So keep an eye on that. Foliar feeding. So I put a link in the resources, just a Peaceful Valley Farm supply. We just use the liquid fish emulsion and liquid kelp. The normal ratios for application rates. At the 4-leaf stage, this is not necessary. However, it is a great little boost of nutrients and vigor at the early season. when garlic is dealing with fluctuating temperatures and potential pests. It's a great time to either in a backpack sprayer or in a spray bottle, mix in a foliar feeding mixture at the 4-leaf stage. So when you have 4 true leaves, that's when you want to do your first application, and 1 to 2 subsequent applications at a 2-week interval. And the garlic really does shine. It gets that deep green. And again, what we're looking for with the soil fertility and with the weed management and with these foliar feedings is whatever you can do to get your vegetative garlic strong, healthy, vigorous. That's going to result in a larger bulb. If you have a larger plant in the garden, when that plant begins to develop its bulb, it's going to suck resources from the leaves and from the vegetative part of the plant into the bulb and develop its bulb. And so we're really looking for healthy plants in the spring and vigorous growth, which is going to result in a healthier plant, and not just a bigger plant, but all green leaves at harvest time represent an intact bulb layer. And an intact bulb layer is protection from the elements. And I imagine this is what the early garlic growers were looking for, is how do we cultivate this plant so that we can have a bulb that lasts for months and months and months until the next year's harvest. And so whatever we can do to have a vigorous vegetative growth, you're going to have a healthier plant and a longer storing bulb. With hardneck garlic in the spring, usually I would say early May to early June, depending on your location, you're going to remove the scapes on hardneck garlic. You're going to want to snip it with your finger right where it emerges from the last set of leaves when it begins to make its first curl. That photo on the left indicates that. Garlic scapes are delicious, sauteed with a little olive oil, salt and pepper, and kind of a great side dish. You can make garlic scape pesto. All different recipes. Yeah. Oh,
Yum.
yeah, delicious. Go
I'm
ahead.
holding questions. There's quite a few, but I'm holding them for you because I want to make sure you get through your slides, and
Okay.
let's do it. Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. So garlic scape removal, kind of critical for hardneck garlic. We've done trials where I've seen a 50% bulb size diameter reduction when we don't remove scapes versus when we do. So the garlic scape is going to take up a lot of energy and nutrients from the plant as it tries to develop this flower head. And if you remove it, it redirects energy back to bulb development. That being said, we do recommend, especially on larger plantings where timing is really critical, that you leave 1 or 2 garlic scapes on your hardneck garlic as an indicator for harvest time. And we'll talk about that more in a minute. Here's Joro getting a mouthful of garlic scapes. All right, so it's summertime. Usually sometime in early June to mid-June, we will stop all irrigation. You really want to begin your curing process in the ground. We found that if garlic grows in 4 inches down below the soil surface, it's cool, it's moist, and often when garlic is harvested in the hottest time of the year, if you pull it out of that cool, moist, irrigated soil and put it right into a hot and dry barn to cure, that drastic fluctuation actually dehydrates the bulb too quickly and you will reduce your storability. So we recommend usually right around the time of scape harvest, drastically reducing our irrigation. And that allows the bulb to begin its curing process actually in the ground. So scape harvest, usually I'm going to say mid-May to early June, around that same time, decreasing your irrigation, and 2 to 3 weeks before harvest, completely stopping your irrigation so that the garlic can dry down in the field. Harvest and curing are the 2 most critical parts of the garlic growing process. You could prep your soil beautifully, plant it just right, mulch it, irrigate it, weed it, do all the things, and come harvest time, not nail it and really compromise the success of your harvest. So the timing of harvest is critical, especially with hardneck garlic. Softneck garlic is a little bit easier to deal with. It can be left in the ground longer. We usually harvest softneck garlic last. Again, green leaves on the growing plant represents an intact bulb layer. And so at harvest time, ideally, half of your plant is green, half of your plant has begun to brown and dry and die back. That's the kind of the most general recommendation that I can say. If you're going to err on one side of an early harvest or a late harvest, especially with hardneck garlic, I would say err on the side of an early harvest. That way, you're going to have more intact bulb wrappers as the garlic cures, and it's going to be stronger for its storability. You can also remove some soil from the soil profile and look at the development. Make sure that it looks like the bulbs are segmenting into cloves and that it's growing and expanding nicely. Again, the scape is an indicator. I'll show a picture in a minute. The scape will basically uncurl, and when it does that, it can be a great indicator of when it's time to harvest. You'll notice in the picture, this farmer here has a spade. Do not slice your garlic bulb after 9 months of care and being in the ground. Don't be careless at harvest time. Be careful. Set your spade many inches back from the base of the plant. Loosen the soil. Pull it out. Get the soil off the roots and bunch it. Again, hardneck garlic. Hardneck garlic, half green leaves, half dry leaves. That means harvest time. You'll see the photo here on the left, a lot of green leaves, a little bit of yellow, a little bit of dehydration in the leaves, but we want to err on the side of green versus too dry. If you harvest when it's too dry, you're going to have cloves splitting. You're going to have decomposing bulb wrappers and again, less storability. Here's the unfurling scape angle at a 45 degree. That is ideal for harvest time. So you'll see here in the photo, we left one garlic at the head of the bed to be an indicator for harvest time for the hardneck garlic. So garlic makes that beautiful curly scape. That's when it's great to harvest it for its culinary purposes and to redirect energy to bulb growth. And we leave one on when it does that 45 degree angle. Maybe even 90 is okay. But once it sticks straight up, you're going to have very little bulb wrapper protection there. I had to throw in this picture since I grow garlic in northern Utah and Mormon country. I had a friend recommend labor help, and this is who showed up to the farm one day, and they definitely kicked ass. I will just say that. Curing is really important as well. Cool, dark, and dry with good airflow. We bundle the garlic into bunches of 10 bulbs with baling twine or hemp string. Then we take those bundles and we hang them out of the sun in a ventilated area. You really want to avoid harvesting with a lot of moisture on the leaves, because if they're bundled together and there's a lot of green, they can cause mold issues. So cool, dark, and dry with good ventilation for your curing. Final product here, we got the hardneck garlic on the left, softneck on the right. Trimming the roots, cutting back the stem, making sure a nice perpendicular cut, not at a slant, because that'll create a pointed, hard pointed area that can actually damage other bulbs in your crate or in your onion sack or however you're carrying your garlic. So make sure you do a nice perpendicular cut. Clean the outside wrappers, get them looking beautiful, but remove as few wrappers as needed to get them clean and looking nice, but still keeping that wrapper in place for storability. And I think, we just have 15 minutes here. I want to make sure we have enough time to address these questions. I did want to just kind of end on this little mythical story that I've come across in some of my garlic readings. There's a document known as the Bauer manuscript, which is found in a cave in northwestern China by a Turkish army officer in 1890, but the documents were dated at 350 AD, basically the oldest known Sanskrit manuscript in existence. And the first lines of this manuscript, written in Buddhist Sanskrit, described the sacred mountains where healing plants grow. And I'm just going to read a passage here from that. It says, Om, in your beautiful groves, resounding with the voices of various kinds of birds, the medicinal plants glow at night like sacrificial fires. On the mountain which is, through its gifts, the benefactor of all creatures, there dwell the sages of enlightened mind. They roam the countryside in company with one another, inquiring into the tastes, properties, forms, powers, and names of all medicinal plants. Having observed a plant with leaves dark blue like sapphire, and with bulbs white like jasmine, crystal, the white lotus, moonrays, or the conch shell, and having his attention aroused by it, Susutra approached the sage Kasiraha with the inquiry into what it could be. This is garlic, and in each bulb, because bulbs are reproduced by the clones and not by the seeds, every single season, that clove needs to be planted to continue to the next year. So in that way, as garlic growers, we do have this unique connection to ancient garlic growers' pasts. And I just love this passage that these enlightened sages of the early times were enthralled and filled with reverence with this medicinal plant that that is now grown widely throughout the world, and we get to have in the home garden. So we'll continue on now to some questions.
Yes, we will. And now it's time for the lightning round. This is a lot of questions coming up. Okay. Variety for Southern California?
Yeah, great. Southern California. So I guess when I hear that, I first think coastal versus mountain. You know, we can be in Southern California and be in higher altitudes and more desert-like conditions. But I would say in Southern California in general, I would recommend both a soft neck garlic, and I would recommend trying probably, I'm going to say Siberian or any marbled purple stripe. You know, I recommend Fertility Farm as a great garlic source. I just saw that they released a new inventory of their seed garlic for the fall. So again, in the resources page in the next couple of slides here, there's a link to Fertility. I would say go onto their website right away, see what they have available. They're filled with great information. But just off the top of my head, I would say any soft neck variety that you can find, and Siberian would be a great hardneck variety to try in the South.
Okay. A lot of people want to know about gophers. They love garlic.
Great. Yeah. So we didn't touch on a whole lot of pest management and pest issues. Gophers is definitely an issue. However, I've seen that in general, gophers will go for an outer edge chomp, and then realize that that's not a sweet, tasty fall carrot or a gentle beet, but packs a little more punch. And usually they'll sample something on the outside, maybe pull one or two plants down, but then leave it alone. But just regular gopher trapping is the best advice I have on that. You know.
Yeah, you haven't met my gophers. They love my garlic.
Oh, really? Yeah.
I had an entire planting go.
Oof.
Okay. Storage. Folks want to know how long to store, what temperature to store at, when's the best time to braid. Can you talk about that?
Great. Yeah, so storage. So post-harvest, you really want to make sure before you take your garlic out of curing off of your rack or however you're drying it, you really want to make sure that the stems are completely dry. If there's any moisture in the stem, you're still going to be dealing with rot and fungal issues. And you really want to avoid that. So that's a number one thing is before you take, the garlic is going to cure best as a whole plant with the roots intact, with the leaves intact. That'll completely dry, get brittle to the point where you can almost remove the roots with your fingers, and the leaves will get so brittle you can crack it. That's when you want to snip your your bulb to an inch or so off the bulb and get rid of the foliage. So that's really important, making sure there's no moisture in that stem when you take it out of curing. I really prefer onion sacks, plastic crates, burlap, cardboard boxes, any of that is going to retain moisture and is not the best. So if you can put it into onion sacks or plastic crates, cool, dark, and dry in a basement, somewhere where it's not going to get light, that has good airflow and is not going to freeze, but is not going to get hot. Those are the best conditions for storing your garlic. And then just keep an eye on it. That's the main thing. Each season has so many variables that storability may change. If you're used to your garlic being harvested in July and storing every year until December, that may not be the case every single year. So keeping an eye on quality control, opening up your box of garlic, your crate of garlic every couple of weeks, keeping an eye on it. If something feels like it's dehydrating, use it. Make the garlic honey, dehydrate it, do something that can preserve that before it further deteriorates, is really important. Great question on the garlic braiding. Garlic braiding is really best to do within a week of harvest. You do want to be able to have some dry down so you can clean the bulb, but if you let the stem get too brittle, it's going to become really difficult to braid. So, you want to kind of keep an eye on it when you harvest that. And when it's in curing, when you want to still have some flexibility in the stem, you can wet a towel and soak the foliage if it feels like it's getting really dry, and that will kind of help rehydrate it so you can braid it. But usually, sometimes even it's great to braid garlic within a couple of days of harvest and then deal with the cleaning and preparation of the bulbs after they're braided. Great question on that.
Okay, we've got a couple people that want to eat their green garlic and bulbs too. So yeah, if you cut the greens, is that going to impede the bulb formation? And what do you think about the strategy of planting them closer together, harvesting every other one as a green garlic? Will
Awesome.
the remaining garlics get big?
Awesome. Love that question. So, when I hear green garlic, I think of, spring dug, early season garlic that looks more like a scallion or a small leek. So spring garlic dug before there's real bulb formation happening, where the shaft of it and the area where the bulb is going to develop is actually just straight, looks like a leek. So that's what I think of when I hear green garlic. Cutting the actual green leaves with like a scissor, that is something that is fine to do. You don't want to remove more than 2 or 3 leaves on a plant, but removing the actual leaves and chopping them up and using them like chives is great. In terms of the planting every other, that's one option. Here's one thing that I've done in the past is when you break up, especially a softneck garlic that has 20 cloves in it, usually 8 to 10 of those are going to be nice plantable size cloves, and the other 8 to 12 are going to be little puny small cloves that maybe you just set aside and will eat. What we like to do is we'll save all those small cloves and we'll plant them at a really close density, like almost an inch apart, as close as we can set them in a row, and do 6 or 7 rows in a bed. So plant an entire bed of really close spaced small cloves with the intention of harvesting that section just for green garlic as you need it. So That's something that I would recommend, maybe planting your largest cloves for your bulb production, and then having a small area where you plant your smaller cloves at a closer density for your green garlic. But great question.
Wondrous. Okay. How deep should the straw mulch be?
Great question too. So straw mulch has a lot of air in it. So when you apply it to the top of the soil after garlic planting, if it's coming off of a bale, I would say you could have it be 4 inches, 5 inches deep. As the rains come, as it begins to decompose a little bit, that'll settle and become maybe an inch of mulch covering the soil by springtime. Every now and then, you may have to walk your rows and help some of that garlic emerge if it gets stuck under under that straw. But straw is really airy, and the garlic should emerge no problem. Leaf mulch can be troublesome if you do it really thick, because it kind of makes a mat when it gets wet, and the garlic does have a tough time emerging through that. So if you're going to do leaf mulch, maybe do it a little bit lighter load on that, maybe just 2 or 3 inches.
How about pine needle? We had a question about pine needle mulch.
Yeah.
Red needle.
Yeah, I would say I don't have experience with that, but I would say my intuition is to avoid pine needles. It seems like a lot of carbon, a lot of dry matter that won't easily break down in the soil. And maybe, that's not something I've experienced with, but my thoughts would be maybe avoid pine needle mulch, stay more on the grass clipping or straw.
And redwood has a secondary compound in it that inhibits the growth of other plants, so I wouldn't use that either.
Thank you.
Okay. A couple of people wanted to talk about companion planting and interplanting their garlic with other crops. What's your feeling about that?
Definitely something that I've been interested in as well. I've thought about growing low-growing leguminous crops in the pathways or even between rows that would potentially add nitrogen availability to the growing plant, but not compete with the garlic growth. I know that garlic and roses are a great companion plant. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I've definitely seen garlic planted around the base of fruit trees and around roses. The main thing with companion planting and garlic is again back to the superficial root structure. Garlic just does not do a very good job of outcompeting other plants that have more vigorous tap roots. And so that's the main reason that I've kind of steered away from interplanting, especially in a commercial production or small scale production. I think it really would reduce your yields. In a home garden setting, the only thing is water management. Garlic likes heavy, deeper irrigations, but more infrequent, so that it can dry out between each watering and not have sitting water around the bulb area. And so if you're growing lettuce in between your garlic, it's going to have different water needs, and that might be an issue. But I'm definitely all for experimentation. I'm glad that somebody brought that up.
Okay. Would you recommend neem oil for rust?
Great question. Not something I have experience with. The main things that I've heard with rust in this area are the late planting option. Also using agribon or some kind of a woven fabric covering to actually create a physical barrier between the spores and the garlic. So covering your garlic with a row cover. But I've not, that's a great question. I've not experimented with that myself.
Can you grow it in a grow bag?
Yes, I've seen a decent, probably 1.5-inch diameter bulb grown in a mason jar. 1 clove stuck into high fertility, potting soil into just a regular mason jar, and it developed a nice bulb. So yeah, raised beds, grow bags. I've seen it up in Half Moon Bay at the hydroponic growing facility up there. Very, very versatile. Definitely could grow it in a grow bag. Keep an eye on fertility and water management.
Do you have any idea if it's dangerous to dogs? Can dogs eat garlic?
Yeah. I
Bad
definitely,
breath.
yeah, I get, yeah. Not that I know of. I don't think that it's dangerous to dogs. I have not seen my own dog go for garlic, eating it ever. Yeah, not that I know of. I think it's a safe plant for dogs.
How much of that scape do you trim?
So you want to remove this picture actually here is pretty great. You can see this last leaf emerging right next to where the garlic scape is coming out, and you want to just snip it off right there, right where it emerges from the last set of leaves. And you want to do it when it's doing this kind of this curl, especially if you're wanting to use it for the culinary purposes of stir fry or a garlic scape pesto. Once it gets a whole lot woodier, it really changes its quality for eating. So the earlier the better to remove it, but after it makes that first curl is generally when we recommend.
And the latest time you can plant in Corralitos?
April.
Yes, sir. Just
Yeah,
thought right out.
as long as you still got, spring planting is sometimes, a great option, especially for soft neck garlic that's going to remain, the cloves are going to remain firm and solid. The main issue with waiting to plant later is if your cloves begin to dehydrate and deteriorate in quality. But if you have a nice storing garlic and you're not able to get it in the ground for whatever reason earlier in the fall or winter, spring planted garlic is definitely fine to do. It'll catch up.
Okay, two more questions and then we're going to move on. You talked about rotation a little bit. So 3-year rotation. Can you clarify what does that mean? You
Right.
don't plant them in the same place. What's it?
Sure. So let's say that you have 3 4-by-8-foot raised bed garden plots in your backyard. Year 1 in box 1, you would have garlic. Year 2, you would move that garlic to box 2. Year 3, you'd move it to box 3, and year 4, you would be back repeating on where you planted garlic in the first year. And then, in rotation would be whatever you prefer for your garden crops, just as long as it's not another allium. So, great to grow winter squash before garlic. It helps suppress weeds. It's not a heavy feeder necessarily. It can be cleaned up quickly when it's harvested. Tomatoes can come before garlic. But that's what I mean when I say a 3-year rotation, is that you're going to wait 3 years before you plant in the same spot.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to ask a stupid question. If I want to plant garlic in November, and it is November, and I'm having a hard time finding it because everybody and their brother wants to garden right now, should I just go to the store and buy some garlic and plant it?
Great. No such thing as a stupid garlic question, and thanks for bringing that one up. I would say don't do it. Don't buy garlic from the supermarket that was intended for culinary use and plant it in your home garden. That's a recommendation of erring on the safe side. It might be fine. At Shoppers Corner a month ago, I saw some gorgeous purple stripe, what looked to be hardneck garlic. I couldn't find out from the produce manager where it came from, but I was like, geez, I would plant that. The issue is, you don't know what kind of sprays have been put on the garlic that's intended for culinary use. And I would say that it's best to, if for some reason with all the different resources online, you're not able to find garlic for this year, I would say skip it and order your garlic for the next year on January 1st when Fillory opens their online sales, and hold out until you can get garlic that is from a certified seed garlic production farm where they're really looking out for healthy garlic for the home garden.
Great. I'm going to move us along. There are more questions. Are you available to answer those by email if we give out an email address as part of the reference?
Absolutely.
Okie dokie. So if you didn't get your question answered, when you get the follow-up information, you will have an email address that you can send your questions to, and we'll get them to Pete. That was an incredible class. Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
want to point out a couple of classes that are going to be coming up. We're taking a break in December, but this November, we're going to do a herbal remedy demonstration panel, and it's going to be 4 local herbalists who are professional and awesome, and they're going to be doing so cold and winter flu season herbal remedies, and they're going to do demonstrations and then have a panel discussion at the end. So look for that. It isn't available to register for yet, but it's coming. And in January, we're hoping to have a soils class with Daryl Wong, who is doing no-till at scale research at the UCSC Farm and Garden right now. And next slide. There you go. A lot of you wanted to know where to get. So
yeah. So here's our just kind of basic resources page, but these are good ones. Again, the garlic primer by Orrin Martin, great resource to accompany this discussion. Really focuses on garlic growing in the Central Coast. Tons of great information, varietal descriptions in there. The link to Fillory Farm, that's definitely our go-to seed garlic supplier. And like I said, I just got an email from them today that said that they've recently updated their inventory, and they still do have a great planting stock available. So I would definitely check them out ASAP and get some garlic ordered through them. The Peaceful Valley Farm Supply is on there because that's where I source our foliar feed nutrients. And then please reach out. I welcome any and all inquiries. I would be happy to do any kind of consulting visits, especially around potential school garden activity or garlic planting programs or activities in the area. So please send me an email. We can set up a time to discuss or chat over the phone. That's the best way to contact me. And thank you all so much for being part of this. It's been a pleasure
Hey,
and an
Pete,
honor.
did you mention where you're working now as a consultant?
Say again?
So, did you mention where you're working now and how people could reach you in that way?
Yeah, so I'm working for currently working for Edible Ecoscapes, which is a home garden maintenance and installation company here in Santa Cruz that focuses on perennial, annual orchard installations. And yeah, you can contact me through the email and inquire about that as well.
That's great. Well, we look forward to seeing you all on future classes, and hope you have a good holiday. And Pete, thank you so much. Vanessa, thank you for staying up with us. And we're going to call it a wrap. That went well.
All right,
Thanks all.
everybody. Happy garlic growing.
Take care.